can comprehend God and understand what God is doing. That's not God. Yeah. God remains a mystery. We ask questions like, where was God? Why did this happen to me? Does my life have that? Can anything good come from my pain? Is my story too broken for God? One of the things that happen as listeners, we need to learn, especially in Africa, is how do we listen to each other so that that big injustice and parts of injustice and pain can come on your own. What is it that makes Mandare? What is it that grieves Mandare community? What is it that grieves Kai community? What is it that grieves the community? That is different from what grieves people at the national level for the community. So it's important to understand that every one of us has a story.
Hello, amazing people. If you're watching us, then that simply means you're in for a wonderful conversation, an insightful conversation, a conversation that really resonates and relates to you. And in doing so, I like us to walk this journey together. And so, I ask you to do for us this four things. The first thing, I like you to like the video. In liking, the algorithm will push the video to different people. The second thing, I like you to basically comment on the video. Let us know your genuine perception and feeling about the video. Number three, I like you to share the video to the person who really needs it. And the last thing, I like you to basically subscribe to the video, because in subscribing, you will be notified whenever we release a new video. So with that, thank you and welcome to God in My Story.
Hello viewers and listeners, welcome to God in My Story podcast, brought to you by Brighter Future Foundation. God in My Story is a conversation about finding God's presence in everyday life. Through the Bible, honest conversations and real life stories, we discover that no matter what we have been through, our story is part of God's greater story of hope, healing, redemption, and restoration. So it's important to understand that every one of us has a story. And some of our stories are filled with joy, celebration, answered prayers, and moments of great blessing. Our stories capture chapters of grief, disappointment, failure, rejection, trauma, poverty, broken relationships, or seasons when God seemed silent and far away. Wherever our stories have taken us, we all share one thing in common. We long to make sense of our lives. We ask why certain things happened, what they mean, and whether God has been present through it all. We ask questions like, where was God? Why did this happen to me? Does my life have purpose? Can anything good come from my pain? Is my story too broken for God? So these are not questions of weak faith. They are deeply human questions. So this podcast was done from years of working with people through the joys and struggles of life. As a pastor, theologian, and urban practitioner, I've had the privilege of listening to the stories of people living in Nairobi's informal settlements and many other communities. I've heard stories of pain and hope, loss and resilience, brokenness and courage. But what is true is that every story is different. Yet one question keeps coming up again and again. And the question is, where is God in my story? For some of us feel abandoned, left out. Where is God in my story? Some ask it after losing a loved one. Others ask it after experiencing rejection, poverty, abuse, disappointment for years of unanswered prayers. Some ask it quietly, wondering if God has forgotten them. Others have never found the words to ask it at all. So this podcast is an invitation to explore that question together. Where is God in my story? So that is the question that we'll explore together. And today I'm joined by my brother and friend Simon Peter Litau. Simon Litau, actually, whom many know Simon Peter. So Simon has spent many years serving the church and working in another missionary field. So it's a joy to have him with us as we begin this journey together. Simon, welcome.
Thank you very much.
And I'm sure of what for many years I've served as a pastor and worked alongside communities in Nairobi's informal settlements and beyond. Through those years, I've listened to many stories and they have changed the way I understand God, people, and the Bible. I'm grateful you've joined us for this conversation. But before we go further, we need to explain what God in my story does not mean. And someone can you help us? Like when you're talking about God in my story, is this something that it means and what it doesn't mean? Let's really exploring what it means.
Thank you very much. Hello, viewers, listeners. And it's such an interesting topic for us to explore and begin asking ourselves, when we say God is in your story, what does that mean? But perhaps it would be nice to unpack what that does not mean. And one of the things I would like to put light into is that doesn't mean that the righteous are not subjected to suffering. But by the fact that you are a man or a woman of faith, then that becomes an insurance against suffering. I think that's what the book of Job parts and help us understand. I think also it becomes therefore pain and suffering, loneliness, abandonment, and trauma becomes part of our faith formation. Thus, the Son of God says, my God, why have you forsaken me? So it doesn't mean that you are asleep, that tragedies are happening in your life. It actually means that it means that your story is very 100% human, and that your faith is built up and fortified through that experience. It also means that sometimes because of the human experience, that you're feeling pain and all that, doesn't mean that God is distant from your story. It actually helps us to learn how can God be present in moments of pain. And learn to listen and relate with God at the point of brokenness. And those prompts and those answers will help us locate the conversation.
And again, we don't mean that everything painful happened because God wanted it to happen. Certain things happen to us, and sometimes we think, God wanted it to happen. And especially when we think of Romans 8:28, all things work together. So it's like we are ready to connect everything to God. But it also means that it also doesn't mean that Christians are protected from stuff. But that is what you're saying. We're not immune. We're not protected from suffering.
But rather than the suffering becomes part of our faith foundations.
And then sometimes in the conversation we may think that if you have enough faith, life will always go well. And then people think about that. But in this case, when you're talking about God in my story, it doesn't mean that life will always go well because you are a person of faith. Yeah. And at the same time, you never fully understand, or you not always understand what God is doing. Like sometimes things are just happening, your life is moving on, and you're also looking at your life and you think, yeah, I understand what God is doing. You will never understand sometimes.
If you can comprehend God and understand what God is doing, that's not God.
Yeah.
Yeah. God remains a mystery.
Actually, we thank God in that sense. It's to everything.
Yes. God remains a mystery.
Yeah. And sometimes when you look at the Bible, and many times when you look at the Bible, you will find people who are, now, so many people who are wrestled with grief. They wrestled with confusion. They waited for so long and things are not happening. The issue of injustice. And the people also had a lot of unanswered questions in their own lives. And so faith is not just pretending that life is going to be easy. Yeah.
It's let's unpack that concept a little bit in terms of for our viewers and listeners. And at times, pain and grief can be personal. And you have examples of people in scripture still experience personal grief, moments of pain. It can also be communal. And I'll be very like this because of our experience within other spaces where if a young man is shot by the police, there is a way that loss is felt more by the family, and there is a way that loss is felt by the community. I make personal sympathy. It's a group of people who are experiencing a lot of injustice and the favor, and then they cry out as a community to God, and then God sees, hears, takes concerns, and decides to calm down.
Yeah.
But because there is a people of 100 years, so this is just communal. The community felt it as a people. And so one of the things perhaps when we as listeners we need to learn, especially in Africa, is how do we listen to each other so that then grief, injustice, and parts of injustice and pain can become communal. What is it that makes Mathare? What is it that grieves Mathare community? What is it that grieves Karen community? What is it that grieves the other community? That is different from what grieves people at the personal level, but they could be related.
Yeah.
So I felt we got to unpack that.
And that reminds me of the importance of talking about God in my story that is not disconnected from God in our story.
Correct.
Because we are not just, you're not an individual, it's not about, it's just a personal, of course the personal thing, it's just a communal thing. So when you're thinking about individualism, it robs us of that element of God in our story. And I find that very rich. And thank you for highlighting that, because that helps us in bringing our stories into the things that we're going through.
Absolutely.
And the big question that you're still asking me is God really in our stories? Is He perfect? Well, so we probably transition to for what does God in my story mean?
So just because I think 2 Sundays ago in a local church, but we were explaining together with the congregation about God, the author of our stories, learning from the experience of Abraham and Sarah. Yes. And then pushing it a little further, and he saying, when Hannah came in the mix, was it part of God's story? Then you realize it is. It is. And so the word of
story.
No, it's also part of the land that God's story developing. And so who is the author? Who is the author of the story? And now in the previous years of civilization, we talk about the guy with the ink and pen writing the story of somebody. But now we talk about the guy with the QWERTY keyboard writing the story now. Among the Gen Zs as the author of that story. The author of that story. Yes. And so yeah.
And that means that our stories actually begin with God. Thinking about long before we took our first breath, God knew us.
Yes.
And David talks about it. And Jeremiah. But that is before you were born. So even before we took our first breath, God knew us.
Absolutely. Yes. God knew us. Yeah.
That means even before our successes, someone may think, oh, yeah, passed the exam so well, and that is connected to God. Someone has suffered for a very long time, and then they all of a sudden become wealthy or become rich. And I think that is when God showed up. That is when God was. They don't really connect to failures.
Yes.
That God is absent when you fail. Yes. Yeah.
That's what makes God of the Old Testament unique, because then we have like the Greek gods who are really associated with strength, victory, triumph. If you're not making it, then that God is not on your side. God of the right-handed, right? So it's interesting that I think it was helpful for God to incarnate and become human flesh, so that you can be able to understand that in the person of Jesus Christ, that if God already knew my story even before beginning. It means that it's a package. He knew my success, he knew my wounds.
Yeah.
Right? And why doesn't he prevent them from happening to me? Is because those wounds are part of my faith formation, leadership formation, ministry formation. And so God of the valley, God of the same God is like that. So there's a distinction here between the God of Mesopotamia and the God of the Greeks. The God of the Old Testament. The God of the Old Testament is trying to show us that He knew us, and that He knew our wounds, He knew our successes, He knew everything.
Yeah.
Yes.
And even before that, our wounds. Stay here before our wounds. Because we grow up and then we have new dreams. So before those wounds, God showed present.
Yes. And if you look at the pattern, Genesis 1. Genesis 1. If you pay attention to the details of the world was formless and void, so there was a state of being that was disordered. And then there was order through creation.
Yeah.
And so those people who knew like the perfect creation, they became that there was a state of being that was shattered, formless, and that was made bad and assembled again.
Yeah. And it's interesting that from what you're saying, that in our stories, we normally tend to think of beginning where we should begin. Because you listen to sermons, listen to teachings, you listen to conversations, and people do not think of God as the author of our stories because they begin with one's brokenness. they begin with your being a drunkard or being an addict to something or being a homosexual. And that is where we begin. And what that does is it begins to focus. So the focus is on our fall. We are fallen, which in the Bible comes second, not the creation bit. And then they want us to reform, they want us to change, so that it's on redemption and not just God being with us even before the fall itself, and then brings us to that point when we have the fall, but then God is still at work. So, but we are talking about God being present from the beginning. And that being God, being the author, also means that our identity is not first determined by our past. It's not determined by our family background, because some come from poor families, poor backgrounds, some from rich ones, and then the whole idea of our identity is also, we don't derive it from our achievements, and that is why some people derive confidence, strength, and they talk so much about their personal achievements. But our identity also doesn't come from our failures. Yeah, no. And so many of us are struggling because we don't see God as the author of our stories. We think success, defeat, pain, suffering become or our identity. They don't understand that our identity begins with God. Yes. Yeah. By creating us in His own image. Yes. Yeah. Image of God. Yeah. It's articulating our stories. Our stories. Yeah. And apart from in beginning, it's not the author of our story. We also see that because we can see, from the beginning God started it all. But we miss to understand that even now He's present. Yeah, that He is actually present in my story today. Yeah. And you listen to people and they're wondering, where is God? We can't even connect that God is present. Yes. Yeah. Especially when we go through a very traumatic moments, a moment of loss, a great injustice will get done to you. The human mind can't comprehend. It's not able to comprehend and still God. At the moment. Some takes time. Yeah. It's really from experience. Takes time. Yeah. Okay. But that's true. It takes a bit of time because I'm not subscribed to tennis. Greek God of the world. I've subscribed to a God who have shown me that He is faithful even in moments of suffering and pain. So in the moment of great justice. Injustice. And instead of thinking about someone who is in prison now and thinking, God is in my story, and then how come I'm in prison? If God is all powerful, yes, God is all knowing, yes, God is good, yes, how come I'm in prison? And especially if you did nothing wrong, you don't even understand what it is. Or someone is there today. And I've seen that even during famine. There are parts of our country that go through, and there are parts of the world where people experience a lot of it. So, can God be this famine? But how about you, that you've gone for that job interview and to be disappointed? Is God present? So you're thinking, is God present today? In my story? Or for if apply for a job and then you get a regrets. Or a visa and you get a regrets. So when God in this, when God in this, and why God's silent? When God's silent. Because even as we're recording this, probably some people are at sadly at the gravesite. They're burying a loved one, probably in Lanata cemetery. all of that. And so you're asking, is God here? Is He present? Yeah. It's a difficult thing.
It is. Yeah.
And that is why it becomes beautiful when we begin to think of Jesus entering human suffering.
Yeah.
Because many times we think of God is aloof, He's out there, and He might really not enter our suffering. And He comes and entered, experiencing rejection. And those are some of the things that we struggle to deal with in the Bible, especially when we think of prosperity gospel. How do you handle pain and suffering? Yeah.
We can look at the concept that you've also mentioned, John 1:14. The last scheme of being is God setting a tabernacle. It's God pitching a tent. It's God not coming and visiting and living. God is coming to actually dwell among humans, and then embrace that is human 100%.
Yeah.
So the good side and the bad side. The Son of Man has no place head. Foxes are close where they go to. Parents of there have nests, but the Son of Man has no place head. And when I read that, as I go to work under the Mobile underpass, when I see families, people who sleep on those beaches, believe those, July is very cold. So what does it mean that? Where is God in Yahweh? Let's have the story. Where's God really the story? And so if the Son of Man had nowhere to help and nowhere to sleep, lay his head, so he was homeless. So my question is, should what?
Yeah.
Where should people sleep?
Yeah. And I'm very sure this is something that many are struggling with.
Yes.
And not just those people under the bridges, but even in their own lives at this moment, where they feel they can't really connect to God through the experiences, because what they read in Scripture, what they are taught, what comes from the pulpits, what the beautiful stories they've read, they really tell them, you're on your own, you've been abandoned. And so even as Jesus enters human story, human suffering, then we begin to see that this rejection thing, this grief that he has to deal with, the exhaustion, the injustice, the death that he has to deal with, there is a sense in which we discover God. But at the time it was happening, not be able to see God. And that is how in many ways, when you're going through it, our eyes, we are blinded. We will never see God in it. And so even talking about God in our story, will be bringing us to really, can I see Him now when I'm going through that trauma, when I'm going through that pain, or that traumatic ordeal, or it's easier to see Him once the thing is gone. And then I begin to look back. Then as I look back, then I can begin to reflect. Truly God was with me. God was there. And I think that is the difficulty we'll find, because you want to understand God now, especially when you're going through it. That is we want that assurance that is with us.
So summarize some of our viewers who are undergoing disappointments, some of them are, and you mean it's going to be as simple as just a breakout.
Yeah.
A young man, a young girl.
Yeah.
You have been left over TikTok. Somebody has written a message. They call it dumping, or they call it nothing. I don't know.
Everything is
That one is. It can be somebody has been fired.
Yeah.
And you like to say somebody has been put in prison on reasons. Maybe you're talking to somebody who Now, Augustine got so set in absent in the story that they think their life does not mean anything else. They have the past lives of connected to suicide. Others are actually, because of the disappointments, like so on, because of the economy and all that, they're thinking about harming themselves. People who cut themselves, and if I think a year, the supposition nowadays, you can cut yourself and then you really need. Others have gotten into behaviors, antisocial behaviors.
Yeah.
Just go. And it's just to ask you to track back and begin again the life of Jesus. Born in a manger, not in a room.
Yeah.
A manger. And then please to Egypt as a refugee. And then coming back, and then he's received with a lot of hostility.
Yeah.
Finding his own, the people who come his family reject.
Yeah.
That reject.
Yeah.
In fact, instead of celebrating him, they're looking for opportunity to actually fish him. And when he gets disciples who are horrible guys, they came for the wrong reasons. They don't get it even after the years. And then the crucifixion story. I think we need to pay attention so much to the crucifixion story. What does that really mean? In the context of human experience. Human experience. So that then you are able to know that God is like that. In that exertion, it might be difficult to feel God, but God is there in that exertion. Yes. So what they did, don't even like,
It's totally
the story is still being written. Why do you want to cut your story short? That's what people do.
Because they come to the tail end, they think it is the end of the story.
Yes.
So instead of enduring a detail or going through the process, they want to end it.
Yes.
And some also devise means of getting rid of the pain or experiences, and that is why we get into addictions and all of this, because of that numbness that will help us. But I think it is important to look at, if you're looking at the life of Jesus, and you're looking at the lives of others, every person's life, there are things that happen, and you just realize later that God was there. And if we pay attention, if we pay enough attention, then we also look at our lives, we may not feel it. And then, of course, even for Christ, at a certain point, my God, why have you forsaken? It was that moment. And we can actually feel abandoned. We can feel forsaken. But what we're showing you, the viewers, the listeners, is the whole idea of don't let go too soon. God is actually that story. You may not understand it fully. You may not be aware of what is going on. In fact, you may be on another virus. But God is actually present. If you just wait a little, if you just wait. Like, for example, someone who has been deported. And you're back in your city. What's the exact? From South Africa? Yeah, from South Africa at the moment. How do you act with that? The beautiful thing is that God actually redefined or redeemed our stories. So that if we stay there, if we open our eyes, if we wait a little, we'll actually realize that God redeems our stories. And God redeems our stories. As you spoke, we just talk about the usage journey. And there's a place that humanity doesn't like time spending and reflecting. Is in the moments of pain. The usage journey, viewers, is you take a journey of you are here, and then you begin descending, and then you hit the rock bottom, and then begin coming up, and then you come back again up. So it's glory, death, release, direction, and all that, and then resurrections. And so
think in the future podcast, what we might want to do is to explore tools that our viewers that can help our viewers, and maybe they're not there, but perhaps they can be developed. And how do you sustain a faith at the rock bottom?
Yeah.
How do you remain sane at the rock bottom? How do you hold on to the faith?
Yeah.
The rock faith. How do you hold on? It was on a lot. You want to hold, you should hold on at your humanity.
Yeah.
So how do you remain human? You know, a person of faith and a rock bottom, even as you find your way up. And sometimes you're correct to say, it's not you finding your way up. My experience has been I was carried.
Yeah.
I was so exalted while I tell you, more than one instance is that don't realize how I came out of it. Really, I do not know. I do not know. And as a leader, as a pastor, as I carry burdens of the people, as I carry my own burdens, and hit that rock bottom, stuck, very quiet. It's very lonely.
Yeah.
It's not motivating. And I kid you not that even in the household of believers, the word walk for moments and defining moments, and these are places, if you're not careful, you can make people enemies very fast. You see, I was in this situation, I was going to with the Lord, and then maybe you made a comment, or maybe perhaps a comment, you didn't know what I was going through, but then I will become offended because I'm very vulnerable and I'm bruised. Or maybe I didn't you, I didn't know, you didn't call me, and so you're not my friend.
Yes.
In fact, I think that moment is the one that really harms the household of believers, harms of you abandon me. And from my pastoral experience, when somebody is at the rock bottom, is it there? Divorce.
Yeah.
A business that the toy market is burnt down, and then a Christian is there. You don't visit them. Some really church. You really visit them. Yeah. So how do we sustain and our faith? How do we remain safe? And the moment of darkness before God begin actually revealing our stories.
And that is so beautifully put. Because I'm thinking of many people thinking of life not as a U-shaped journey, but as a straight line. You're born, you get into this space, and you go to school. What do you want to become? Become a doctor. And they think that is the way that people they're going to be doctors. Then in between, you begin to meet life. And you graduated, and you've come out with flying colors. Then the next thing that awaits you is joblessness. And you're thinking, if we don't understand the U-shaped journey, and we think life is a straight line, our faith will always take marks. Our faith will always be in trouble. Like you begin a relationship and you're thinking, this is heading to marriage, we're going to have a beautiful life. Then the next thing that hits you is I'm not interested in you anymore. So that U-shaped journey becomes a beautiful metaphor for us, even as you're thinking of our own lives. Because people have actually crushed in their faith because they can't understand what is happening.
Can't comprehend.
And God redeems our stories in beautiful ways. Like those who know your story, like I know Gilbert. And those who know my stories, those days in Kibera and Europa and the struggle, will not even, they look at us today, they think things have improved because, but even where we are now, it's not rosy yet, because you have devils or demons or issues to that has to be attached to level. Yeah. So it's never easy. And so, but the beautiful thing when we're talking about God redeeming our own stories is this whole idea that even if you look at the Bible, the things that Joseph went through, eventually God's saving work is revealed. Naomi's grief is another point where she loses her loved ones.
Yeah.
And there is famine and there is great grief in our life. But then through grief, God comes in. Through unlikely waters. Yes. Yeah. And God just shows up. Yes. And I think it is important for us to look at that. Even those who end their lives, those who find that they have come to the end of it, if they were keen or if they took time to also reflect, they would see also places where they were delivered, places where they got help. Someone came through for them, someone bailed them out. So those patterns are there. The unfortunate thing is one, the entire thing. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And the beautiful thing about that, are two things, perhaps viewers that make sense, is that one is that God can redeem your story, and I think speaking from experience, but also from speaking a bit of truth for us.
Yeah.
That's using an outsider.
Yeah.
A person not of faith. I found myself in a ditch, and I thought I was at Central Police Station. And the allegation that were put to me, because I would like to protect the viewers, I don't want to highlight, go through the details.
Yeah.
I was looking at robbery with violence. Never heard of good people in my life. I don't even know how to operate a gun by myself. Also, who came by rescue. It's an alcoholic. An alcoholic. Yes. People were failing and don't know what happened. Yeah. So sometimes God redeems your story and God redeems you using an outsider.
Yeah.
And that is something again, the people, the household of faith, who are listening to us as faithful Christians, sometimes we stand and to be able to see, that God can use an outsider.
Yeah.
That person is an outsider to you, but not an outsider to God.
Thinking of a Muslim coming to your rescue, to your age, then you're looking at them through the lens of their faith and religion, not that they have God's image in them.
Yes.
That God can use them. And so I like what you're saying, that
even a donkey spoke. Yeah. So maybe because God, that is just related. I think what you're saying that is that the God who redeems people's stories in the name of God, then use anything. The fact that we wanted to do that is just to put our viewers with two texts. Let me understand. And I testify. Son of man can give those they give again. And when we talk about bones, we are talking about people's whose stories that ended in people's eyes. Yeah. And the natural process of decomposition had happened in that event.
Yeah.
It was so messed up that gave me imagination other than just painting tombstones with white paint for remembrance.
Yeah.
Even beyond that, without really knowing the out of God. And so the power of how God is not limited. I'm coming back to what you said about the people when people with a big love. Sometimes God can reveal stories that make, irredeemable.
Yeah.
Really, that are irredeemable. In Isaiah 65, 17, God is saying to the prophet that I am going to do something new.
New thing, yeah.
New thing. You always know that the writer of the story is about to do something new. That's what the prophet is telling us. And then Ezekiel, some things that move your husband. And you've lost your land in the village, and you look so much dispossessed.
You like it.
You redemption. Ezekiel 97 is teaching us that the work of redemption. If God is the author of redemption, then there's nothing like real redemption.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
I like that because at a certain point, even in my life, even receiving Christ was seen as escaping reality. Because things were bad.
Yeah.
And in the times that I really thought, by example, when I was in high school, when I talked to my friend, John, so John was a friend, and a colleague and a village mate. And one day I went to John before after suffering for a long time, being sick for quite a long time. I stood from Form 1 to Form 3. I didn't study well. And one day I went to John and asked him, I told him, John, I want you to help me do one thing. And then he asked, what is it? Because he was our CU secretary at the time. And I was thinking, but he was one of the CU officials. And I told him, please help me pray that God may take my life. Because I was done with sickness. Because I remember one time I was lying down because I had very serious migraine, very serious headache. And one day I just I don't know what happened. I was just dreaming. I don't know what was happening, but I ran out of the house through the window, and people came and helped me and poured water on me and calm down. And those experiences were very traumatic. I really felt my life was going. But even later, my life also was quite difficult, and you know it. And so, when you really think that it's gone, it's a done deal, when God surprises, brings people your way you never thought about, you never imagined, and they lift you up, it's like they throw a lifeline to you. Yeah. Like you're really drowning, but that lifeline is thrown and it saves you again. And that is actually God redeeming our lives, redeeming our stories. Yeah, the only thing is sometimes can become pushed. When I think the thing, like you say, is too heavy, I can't carry this. When you're thinking of the way people are looking down on you, the shame that you're walking around with, the frustrations of your life, you just think, no, I will never make it. And you're looking at your life, you're looking at the state of your family, you're looking at the state of your mom or your dad or the people who are there, you're looking at your brothers and everyone seems not to be doing well. You're wondering, will this ever come to an end? Then interestingly, you have a friend who comes from a well-to-do family. Things are really happening for them. They're saying, why us? Why us? But they God may not reveal our situations. Yeah. Yeah.
So, when sex speaks God, actually, really remembering.
Yeah.
We hyphen, but remembering what is member.
Yeah.
And I like, we are talking about God the Father, but also like the matter of God the Creator. So God is building our lives up. It's justice. Jeremiah talks about the porter.
Yeah.
The porter is in the hand. It's laid in the hand of the porter. Sometimes because the porter wants what is best, the porter has to make the pay. was modeled and shaped in a very particular way. And so if God is the one that is who we remember in our stories, so our stories are being rearranged so that then they make sense to him and also to us.
Yeah.
And we appreciate later.
Yes. Another thing to think about in connection to that is we find God is the author, and God is present in our stories. And then we also looked at God redeeming our stories. It's also good to think about God rewriting our stories. Because many times, I mean, from the testimony that I've given and what you've shared, it's like it came to the point that God began to rewrite your story. So that what is known now, what is seen now, is different from what was. Yeah. And then it becomes, especially because the worst thing that can happen to one is to think that what they're going to do is the last chapter of their lives. And that it's the worst thing about. Because God will redeem, and you may actually from the point, then you realize you're back to where you were. And the problem comes back against that point that was completely out. So it's not the final chapter, but it's at the same time not the worst problem. Yeah. So I'm looking at God beginning to rewrite us. That is why you see even the Bible, when you read the Bible, then there is the whole idea of restoration. Yeah. And in very well in Genesis, and the rest, things happen, but then eventually God restoring.
Yeah, I feel like the restoration text that happens with the prophets, typically normally after exile.
Yeah.
Exile come in many places, but then when they're taken to captivity, everything is restored.
Yeah.
But then those who are listening to us and have a pattern of leadership in churches or Christian communities, when people experience dark moments, exile moments, bottom hit moments, I think it's our task to energize them with hope, restoration, redemption.
Yeah.
That it's exactly what you're saying, that your story is far from over.
Yeah.
Far from over. And then deviate from commercializing that because I'm not to kill, I kill you out. That I know of a lady who had child with special needs. But then she believed that child would there was a possibility of healing. So some of us who have been given leadership in church, that's such a family and they won't take advantage by actually asking for money or favors. I think that's wrong.
Yeah.
The prophets we see in the Old Testament who are living with people in exile do not do that. But then the task is to enter these people with the vision of this can be better. There's an alternative reality to this. And this is what we call the next page, the next chapter of the story. There is hope.
Yeah.
And
because that takes me back to the same text that you quoted, Ezekiel 37. The value of dry bones. And even as yes, you can these bones live again. Though it was connected to verse 14, where it was about Israel having lost hope. So because they lost hope due to exile, they have become dry bones. So being brought back, being prophesied, it just receiving back the hope that things are going to be beautiful again. Things are going to work. And I think each one of us, wherever we are, should really think about hope in that manner. You are as good as dead if your hope is gone. But let's see that even in the midst of what they're going through, there is still hope. Because the final chapter has not been written, and your life is still progressing, and you do not know what to read. It's just being faithful, staying focused, remaining committed to a cause, and seeing God continue to work with us. I know one of the things with this topic, what may be going through even some of our listeners who are deeply theological in a sense, also be thinking, so why should God, like, is God distant? Little things, and so we can raise so many things, but those are some of the things we will try to address as we the following episodes of podcasts. But it's important to, as we look at this, to connect our own stories, because we've been talking about God in my story, to God's story. Yeah. Because, and for us, where do we find God's own story? And we're looking at the one way, or the way we're introduced to God's story is the Bible, right? In the book of Genesis. And we find that the same pattern that we are used to look at our own lives is what we also see in the Bible. They are from Genesis, actually Genesis chapter 1 and 2, things are beautiful. Everything is okay. And then later, the fall happens. And we can connect our lives to the fall in terms of the pain, the suffering, the addiction, and the things that we've gotten into that are harmful, that are deadly in our lives, are happening because of the fall, the loss of jobs, and all those. But then, when Christ comes, then there is the redemption bit, coming to redeem humanity. Then the book of Revelation is to talk about restoration of all things. And so, looking at God, because many of us read the Bible and just think, yeah, God wrote the Bible, or He inspired people to write the Bible, but they can really not connect their own stories still being written by God. They're about coming to God is not yet done with their stories. Just because we're talking about Revelation, they think God no longer speaks. All complex things, that God is no longer writing stories. That it's important to now make that connection between our own lives and God's story in the Bible.
Yeah. And then to make that connection and see from Genesis as human development.
Yeah.
People developing from that on the way to the past mother, and all that, when they come to all those postnatal stories. Those are stories that God was writing their stories, not as a master plan, but as inspiration to us. Also, what went through the administrations.
Yeah.
And in all of them, I think you can't miss to see that there are moments and there are low moments.
Yeah.
But in all, the stories are still being written. And then again, I think we need to also emphasize the stories are being written individually. And communally. I think if we've lost the sense of reading, of seeing the story as a collective, I think there's a sense in which we need to reclaim that.
It's important. Even when we were in class, those many years, we were studying together. After so many years, this is now from 2004, this is 2026, 22 years down the line, and we're still together. And you can see that God started us, we didn't even know that our stories are being written, even in terms of our ministry, in terms of what we're currently reading about. And so God restoring next time, and many times we use community to restore. And actually that is his way, using the community to rest, or using the community. Like for example, you like school fees and people come alongside. Yeah, just to help you, or you have no job and someone comes and says, hey, I'm glad of that. It's God using others even to restore. Just like Jesus Christ, He using Christ's brothers and sisters to restore our lives, to redeem and restore our lives. And I think that's a beautiful thing. So in the next episode, we'll begin to explore, especially the different parts. When you're talking about creation, we want to connect ourselves to that. How does our life reflect creation? And then we go to the fall.
Yes.
So those will be coming. But as we close this conversation, we want to invite our audience to begin to reflect on one single question. Where have I seen God in my story? What's a Christian to think about? Even if I didn't recognize it at the time, where have I seen God in my story? Because thinking about you, thinking about me and everyone else, we look back and we can see God. He has been there. Yeah. And as we think about that, think about perhaps through someone who stood beside you. Where did I see God in my story? Or probably someone stood with you. Probably you just received that kindly word, a wonderful, and that ignited your spirit. Maybe an unexpected door just opened when you were down, out. But maybe God just gave you strength to survive what you put. It just remained some little strength, and that strength kept you. Or perhaps you cannot yet see Him at all. You can do darkness. Another time, yeah. And that's fine, yeah. And cannot see Him at all. That's fine. Yeah, that's fine. If that is where you want to be, it's important to begin to think, so welcome to this journey that we began. That we can be reflection of this together. Then I'm inviting us to come to a place where we can actually learn to read our lives through God's story. And in that process we begin to discover that He's never stopped pursuing us. We might think He is a way that He is actively pursuing us even today. Yeah. So viewers, listeners, I don't know whether with Simon you have something, but probably the final remark you want to make. I see it was. So I'm speaking to somebody who is really experiencing great joy, and so it's easy to track the pain that has written your story. It's easy when things are going fine. Yeah. Track that. I also want to address somebody who is going through a very bad moment. You had a son. And you don't know where that son is, whether he's alive or dead, or was captured. You don't know where that son is. So you don't know whether you have a son or not at that moment. You are now trying to raise funds to organize a funeral of a beloved. You can speak directly to the cameras. But that's a dark moment. Or maybe you are at work in Saudi Arabia, going through very difficult moments at your workplace. That's a very dark moment. And sometimes God does not make sense. God does not make sense. But the fact that God does not make sense, my encouragement to you is an invitation to explore the harder truth. How is God writing my story? A full stop to your story. Your life does not have a full stop. And think the next chapter is about to begin. Hold on. Thank you, Simon, for those beautiful words. And thank you, listeners and viewers, for joining us for this past episode of God in My Story. My prayer is that this podcast will come a place where people discover Him, hope, and purpose. Not because life has been easy, but because God has been faithful. And please remember this, God in my story does not mean that every chapter is easy. It means that no chapter is lived without God's presence. No wound is beyond God's redemption. And no story is beyond His power to restore. Until next time, may you continue to discover God's presence in your story and find your place within His greater story of creation, brokenness, redemption, and restoration.